The Princess in Chains. The cold silence of space wrapped around the prison ship like a dark shroud. Inside its metallic walls, the air was heavy, filled with the quiet hum of machinery and the occasional clatter of boots on steel floors. Deep within the ship's core, in a dimly lit chamber, sat Princess Zara. She was not seated on a throne of glory or power, but in a high-tech restraint chair designed to contain her. Zara's silver hair shimmered under the pale blue lights, her glowing emerald eyes betraying no emotion. She couldn't move her legs. An accident in her past had taken that from her. But Zara was no ordinary prisoner. She was the daughter of Emperor Korvax, ruler of the most feared alien empire in the galaxy. Her title, however, meant nothing now. Her father, a ruthless tyrant, had abandoned her, leaving her to rot on this prison ship. The guards, towering alien soldiers with rough, scaly skin, stood watch outside her cell, speaking in hushed tones. "She's worthless," one guard muttered. "Why would the Emperor care about her now? He called her a disgrace." Zara listened, her jaw tightening. She knew the truth. She wasn't a disgrace. She was a threat. Her father feared her because she knew something no one else did. A secret that could destroy his empire. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. An explosion ripped through the silence, throwing the guards against the walls. Red emergency lights flashed as alarms blared. "What's happening?" one of the guards shouted, scrambling to his feet. Before anyone could answer, the chamber doors burst open, and a figure stepped through the smoke. It was a human, a man. He was clad in a black combat suit, his face partially hidden by a helmet. He carried a blaster in one hand, his other hand holding a small holographic device that displayed a map of the ship. The guards roared and charged at him, but the man was quick. He dodged their attacks with precision, his movements fluid and calculated. His blaster fired beams of light, taking down the guards one by one. Zara watched, her heart pounding. Who was this man? And why was he here? The human finished off the last guard and turned to her. He removed his helmet, revealing a rugged face with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. His dark hair was messy, and a small scar ran down his cheek. "Princess Zara," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Ethan Blake. I'm here to get you out." Zara narrowed her eyes. "Why would a human care about me? My father's soldiers will kill you for this." Ethan smirked. "Your father's soldiers are the least of my problems. Let's just say I don't like tyrants, and I don't leave people behind. Now, do you want to stay here, or are you coming with me?" Before Zara could respond, the floor beneath them trembled again. More explosions echoed through the ship. Ethan moved quickly, pulling a small device from his belt and disabling the restraints on Zara's chair. As the restraints released, Zara's chair transformed, unfolding into a sleek, mobile hover device. She gripped the controls, her sharp mind already assessing their situation. "Fine," she said, her voice steady. "But don't think I trust you, human." "Fair enough," Ethan replied. "Now move." They sped through the narrow corridors of the ship, alarms blaring and lights flickering. Soldiers poured in from every direction, but Ethan and Zara worked together, dodging attacks and taking down enemies. Zara used her hover chair's advanced technology to outmaneuver their pursuers. The chair had built-in defense systems, energy shields, and small laser blasters that she controlled with ease. Ethan couldn't help but be impressed. "You're not as helpless as I thought," he remarked, firing at an approaching soldier. Zara shot him a glare. "I'm not helpless at all. Keep moving." As they approached the ship's hangar, a deafening roar echoed behind them. They turned to see a massive alien mech stomping toward them. The mechanical beast towered over them, its glowing red eyes locked onto Zara. "Target acquired," a robotic voice announced. Ethan cursed under his breath. This just got a lot harder. The mech raised its massive arm, a cannon forming on its wrist. Zara's hover chair darted to the side just as a blast of energy erupted, scorching the floor where she had been moments before. We can't fight that thing head-on, Zara shouted. We don't have to, Ethan said, his eyes scanning the hangar. He spotted a small escape shuttle docked nearby. We just need to reach that shuttle. Can you cover me? Zara hesitated for a split second before nodding. She activated her chair's weapons, firing rapid bursts of energy at the mech. The blasts barely dented its armor, but it was enough to distract it. Ethan sprinted toward the shuttle, dodging debris and enemy fire. He reached the controls, activating the ship's systems. Zara, now, he called out. The princess maneuvered her chair toward the shuttle, narrowly avoiding another blast from the mech. Ethan extended his hand, grabbing hers and pulling her inside just as the shuttle's doors closed. The mech fired one last shot, but the shuttle launched into space, the blast missing by inches. Inside the shuttle, Zara caught her breath, her hands trembling slightly. Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Why did you save me?" she asked softly. Ethan leaned back in his seat, staring out at the stars. "Let's just say I don't like seeing people thrown away like garbage. Besides," he added with a smirk, "this isn't over yet." Zara's eyes narrowed. She had no idea who this human was or what his true intentions were, but one thing was certain: her life had just taken a dramatic turn. Outside, the prison ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, and the shuttle disappeared into the void of space. The chase. The prison ship burned in the distance, its remains swallowed by the darkness of space. Inside the small escape shuttle, the silence was broken only by the hum of its engines. Zara sat in her hover chair, her glowing emerald eyes fixed on the human who had just saved her life. Ethan Blake leaned over the control panel, rapidly pressing buttons and adjusting settings. He muttered something under his breath before glancing at Zara. "Bad news," he said. Zara's voice was cold, her suspicion evident. "Let me guess, we're not safe yet." Ethan chuckled dryly, shaking his head. "Not even close. Your father's fleet is already tracking us. They'll be here in 5 minutes." Zara's jaw tightened. She didn't need Ethan to tell her how relentless Korvax's forces were. Her father didn't make mistakes, and leaving loose ends was not in his nature. "What's the plan, then?" she asked, her tone sharp. Ethan turned back to the controls, pulling up a star map on the screen. "The plan is survival. There's a debris field nearby, a graveyard of old ships and asteroid fragments. It's a mess, but it'll give us cover." Zara raised an eyebrow. "You're going to hide from them in a pile of junk." Ethan smirked. "You got a better idea, princess." Before she could respond, the ship jolted violently. The radar beeped, showing several red blips closing in fast. "They're here," Ethan muttered, gripping the controls tightly. Outside, 3 sleek warships emerged from hyperspace, their engines glowing like angry suns. The lead ship fired a warning shot, the energy beam grazing the shuttle's hull. Zara's hands instinctively gripped the arms of her hover chair. "They won't stop until we're dead," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Ethan grinned, a spark of defiance in his eyes. "Then we'll just have to disappoint them." With a sudden burst of speed, the shuttle veered toward the debris field. The warships followed, their cannons firing relentlessly. Ethan maneuvered through the jagged remnants of forgotten battles, dodging chunks of metal and asteroid shards. The debris field was a labyrinth of destruction, with massive ship fragments floating endlessly. Ethan's eyes darted between the radar and the obstacles ahead. "Hold on," he shouted as he steered the shuttle through a narrow gap between 2 colossal wrecks. The shuttle scraped against the edge, sparks flying, but it made it through. Behind them, the warships weren't as lucky. One of them collided with a floating chunk of metal, exploding in a fiery blaze. Zara allowed herself a small, grim smile. "That's one down." Ethan didn't respond. His focus was on the remaining ships, which were closing in fast. "We can't keep running," Zara said, her voice firm. "They'll catch us eventually." Ethan glanced at her, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "You're not wrong. Got any bright ideas, Princess? Zara hesitated for a moment before activating a holographic interface on her hover chair. Streams of alien text and symbols filled the air in front of her. What are you doing? Ethan asked, glancing at her briefly. Saving us, she replied. This chair isn't just a mobility device, it's a command center. Give me a moment. Her fingers danced over the holographic controls, and the chair emitted a faint hum. Suddenly, the debris field lit up with a network of glowing lines, connecting various ship fragments. Ethan's eyes widened. What is that? A defense grid, Zara said, her voice calm but determined. This field was once a battlefield. The wrecks still have functional weapon systems. I'm reactivating them. Before Ethan could respond, the grid came to life. Turrets hidden within the debris swiveled and fired beams of energy at the pursuing warships. The lead ship was hit, its shields flickering before it exploded. The final warship tried to retreat, but Zara targeted it with a barrage of coordinated blasts. Within moments, it was reduced to rubble. Ethan stared at her, a mix of shock and admiration on his face. You could have done that earlier, you know. Zara gave him a pointed look. I didn't trust you earlier. I still don't. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. Fair enough. But you've got skills, Princess. I'll give you that. The shuttle emerged from the debris field, the path ahead clear. Zara deactivated the defense grid, her chair returning to its normal state. We're not safe yet, she said, her voice serious. My father won't stop until he has me, or until I'm dead. Ethan leaned back in his seat, his expression thoughtful. Then it's a good thing you've got me. I've got a knack for staying alive. Zara didn't respond. She looked out the viewport, her mind racing. Ethan might have saved her life, but she knew this was just the beginning. Her father's wrath was far from over, and she couldn't afford to trust anyone, not even the human who had risked everything to rescue her. As the shuttle disappeared into the stars, a shadow loomed in the distance. A massive warship, far larger than the ones they had just escaped, emerged from hyperspace. At its helm stood Emperor Korvax himself, his cold, ruthless eyes fixed on the trail left by the fleeing shuttle. Run all you like, daughter, he said softly. You cannot escape me. Secrets of the Tyrant's daughter. The silence inside the shuttle felt heavier than the weight of the galaxy outside. Zara sat in her hover chair, her glowing emerald eyes scanning the holographic display of nearby star systems. She had barely spoken since they escaped the debris field, but her mind was racing. Ethan, leaning back in the pilot's seat, watched her out of the corner of his eye. You're awfully quiet, he said, breaking the silence. For someone who just blew up half her father's fleet. Zara didn't look at him. I'm thinking. Ethan smirked. About how impressive I am, I hope. That made her glance up, but her expression was anything but amused. Impressive? You call this impressive? We're fugitives, running blind with my father hunting us. I wouldn't call that impressive, human. Ethan shrugged, unbothered. Could have left you back there, Princess. Maybe you'd prefer that. Zara's eyes narrowed. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to her display. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the console. You're hiding something, he said. Zara froze for a fraction of a second before resuming her work. I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. I've been around long enough to know when someone's keeping secrets. You don't trust me, and I get it. But I just risked my neck to get you out of there, so maybe you could give me something to work with. Zara hesitated. She could feel his eyes on her, sharp and unyielding. Finally, she sighed and turned to face him. Fine, she said. You want the truth. My father didn't abandon me because I was a disappointment. He abandoned me because I know something that could destroy him. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Zara leaned back in her chair, her gaze distant. The Empire runs on fear and control. My father has conquered countless worlds, enslaved entire species, all in the name of power. But there's a flaw in his empire. A secret he's been hiding for decades, and I'm the only one who knows about it. Ethan's interest was piqued. What kind of secret? She hesitated again, as if saying it out loud would make it more dangerous. Finally, she whispered, "A weapon. One that could destroy the entire empire. It's hidden on a dead world, far from here. My father found it when I was a child, but he kept it a secret, even from his closest allies. I wasn't supposed to know, but I did. And when he found out, he cast me aside." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't he kill you?" Zara's voice was bitter. "Because even he has limits. I'm his daughter, and killing me outright would make him look weak. But leaving me to die in a prison ship, that's easier to justify." Ethan leaned back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "So, this weapon, what is it?" "I don't know exactly," Zara admitted. "I only overheard bits and pieces. It's ancient, something he found buried deep in the ruins of a long-dead civilization. Whatever it is, he's terrified of it falling into the wrong hands." Ethan smirked. "And by wrong hands, I'm guessing he means yours." Zara nodded. "If I could find it, expose it, it could bring down the entire empire." For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the ship's engines. Ethan stared at her, weighing her words. "Well," he said finally, "I can see why your dad wants you dead. You're a bigger threat than I thought." Zara crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "What about you, Ethan? Why are you helping me? What's your angle in all of this?" Ethan's smirk faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "Let's just say I've got my reasons. The Empire's taken enough from me. Helping you might give me a shot at taking something back." Zara studied him for a moment, trying to read the man who had saved her life. There was a darkness in his eyes, a hint of pain he didn't care to share. Before she could press him further, the ship's radar beeped, pulling their attention back to the console. "Oh," Ethan muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. "What is it?" Zara asked, her tone sharp. "We've got company," he said. The radar displayed a cluster of ships closing in fast. Zara's heart sank. "My father's fleet." Ethan shook his head. "No, pirates. And they don't look friendly." The comms crackled to life, and a deep, gravelly voice filled the cabin. "Unidentified shuttle. This is Captain Rax of the Black Talon. Surrender your vessel, and we might let you live." Ethan sighed, leaning back in his seat. "Great, just what we needed." Zara's fingers hovered over her chair's controls, her mind racing. "What's the plan?" Ethan grinned, his confidence returning. "The plan? We don't let them board. You ready to fight, Princess?" Zara smirked, her chair's weapons powering up. "Always." As the pirate ships closed in, the shuttle veered toward a nearby asteroid field, ready for yet another deadly chase. Battle of the Betrayers. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic maze of jagged rocks spinning in the void. Ethan gripped the shuttle's controls, sweat beading on his forehead as he weaved between the massive chunks of stone. The pirates were relentless, their ships darting through the field like hungry predators. Zara sat beside him, her hover chair tethered to the floor for stability. Her fingers danced over the holographic interface, scanning the pirates' movements. "They're not just random scavengers," she said, her voice tense. "They're coordinated, almost military." Ethan glanced at her. "Military pirates. That's comforting." The comms crackled again, and Captain Rax's gravelly voice filled the cabin. "You can't outrun us, little bird. Surrender now, and maybe we won't carve you up too badly." Ethan rolled his eyes. "I hate when they gloat." Zara didn't respond. Her focus was on the data streaming across her interface. Something wasn't adding up. The pirate ships weren't attacking directly. They were herding them deeper into the asteroid field. "They're driving us somewhere," she said. Ethan frowned. Why would they? Before he could finish, a massive shadow passed over the shuttle. Zara looked up, her stomach sinking. A colossal dreadnought emerged from behind the largest asteroid, its dark hull bristling with weapons. It was far too big to be a simple pirate vessel. "That's not a pirate ship," Zara said, her voice cold. Ethan's jaw tightened. "No, it's not. That's an Empire ship." The realization hit them both at the same time. This wasn't a random attack. It was a trap. Zara's eyes narrowed. "You told me you didn't work for my father." Ethan turned to her, his expression indignant. "I don't. You think I knew about this?" Before she could respond, the shuttle jolted violently. A magnetic tether shot out from the dreadnought, latching onto the ship. Red lights flashed across the console, and the engines sputtered. "They've got us," Ethan muttered. Zara's mind raced. She didn't trust Ethan, but she didn't have a choice. If they were captured, her father's forces would drag her back. Or worse. "What do we do?" she demanded. Ethan grabbed a blaster from the console and stood up. "We fight." Zara activated her hover chair's weapons, the faint hum of its systems filling the cabin. "You'd better not betray me, human." Ethan smirked. "I'd worry more about surviving first." The shuttle's airlock hissed open, and soldiers in black armor stormed in, their weapons raised. Zara wasted no time. Her hover chair's laser blasters fired rapidly, forcing the intruders to take cover. Ethan moved like a shadow, his blaster picking off soldiers with precision. The confined space of the shuttle turned the battle into a chaotic melee, with sparks flying and shouts echoing off the walls. Amid the chaos, Zara noticed something strange. One of the soldiers wasn't aiming at her or Ethan. Instead, they were firing at the shuttle's control systems, deliberately disabling key functions. "Ethan," she shouted, "they're sabotaging the ship." Ethan cursed under his breath, taking out the saboteur with a quick shot. But it was too late. The shuttle's lights flickered, and the engines powered down completely. The lead soldier, a tall figure with a helmet that glowed ominously, stepped forward. He removed his helmet, revealing a scared reptilian face. "You've caused quite the mess, princess," he hissed, his sharp teeth bared in a cruel smile. "Your father will be pleased to know you're finally under control." Zara glared at him, her voice icy. "You're wasting your time. I'm not going back." The soldier laughed. "Oh, you're not going back alive. The Emperor doesn't want you. He wants what you know. And once we take it from you." Before he could finish, Ethan shot him in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. "Sorry, scales for brains, but she's not going anywhere with you." The soldier snarled, clutching his wound. "You can't protect her forever, human." As more soldiers stormed the shuttle, Zara realized they couldn't hold out much longer. She activated her hover chair's emergency override, triggering a hidden protocol. The ship's holographic display lit up, showing a countdown. "What did you do?" Ethan asked, his voice rising. "We're not letting them take us," Zara said. "I've set the ship to self-destruct. We've got 60 seconds to escape." Ethan stared at her, then nodded. "Bold move, princess. Let's hope you've got a plan." Zara pointed to a small escape pod in the corner. "That's our way out." Fighting their way through the remaining soldiers, they reached the pod and climbed inside. As the countdown neared 0, the pod launched, shooting out of the shuttle just as it exploded in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave rocked the pod, but it held steady, drifting into the void. Inside, Zara and Ethan sat in tense silence, catching their breath. "You almost got us killed," Ethan said finally, his tone half annoyed, half impressed. "You're welcome," Zara replied coldly. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "You're full of surprises, princess." Zara didn't respond. She stared out the viewport, her mind racing. The betrayal had shaken her, but it had also made one thing clear. If she wanted to survive, she couldn't just run. She needed to strike back. As the pod drifted toward an unknown destination, Zara's resolve hardened. Her father might have sent his best to capture her, but he had underestimated her. That was his first mistake. and it would be his last. The hidden power. The escape pod floated silently through the cold expanse of space, its tiny thrusters flickering as it approached a desolate, forgotten planet. The world loomed ahead like a ghost, its surface scarred with deep craters and jagged mountain ranges. A faint glow emanated from beneath its surface, pulsing rhythmically like the heartbeat of something ancient and alive. Zara stared out the viewport, her glowing emerald eyes locked on the planet. "This is it," she said softly. Ethan leaned back in the cramped pod, rubbing his temple. "You sure? It doesn't exactly scream safe haven." "It's not supposed to," Zara replied, her tone sharper than usual. "This planet isn't on any map. My father made sure of that. What's buried here is something he feared so much he erased it from history." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "A little heads up would have been nice. What exactly are we walking into?" Zara hesitated, her hands gripping the arms of her hover chair. "I don't know," she admitted. "I only know the stories. My people call it the core, a relic from a civilization older than any of us. It's said to hold unimaginable power. My father claimed it was a weapon, but I think it's more than that." Ethan sighed, shaking his head. "Great. An ancient, probably cursed relic on a dead planet. What could possibly go wrong?" As the pod entered the planet's atmosphere, it shook violently, the turbulence rattling every bolt. The faint glow from the surface intensified, casting eerie patterns across the pod's interior. "Hold on," Ethan muttered, gripping the controls. The pod broke through the atmosphere and crash-landed in a barren canyon. Dust and debris filled the air as the thruster sputtered and died. Ethan unstrapped himself and glanced at Zara. "Well, that wasn't so bad." Zara shot him a glare. "Speak for yourself." The pod's hatch hissed open, revealing a landscape of jagged rocks and glowing fissures. The air was thick with an otherworldly hum, as if the planet itself was alive. Ethan stepped out first, scanning the area with a handheld device. "No signs of life," he said. "Just a lot of weird energy readings. Whatever this core is, it's close." Zara hovered out of the pod, her chair gliding effortlessly over the rocky terrain. "We need to move quickly. My father's forces won't be far behind." They made their way deeper into the canyon, following the faint glow that seemed to guide them. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath them. "This place gives me the creeps," Ethan muttered, his hand resting on his blaster. Zara ignored him, her focus on the path ahead. As they turned a corner, the canyon opened into a massive cavern. In the center of the cavern stood a towering structure, unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The core. It was a massive crystalline formation, pulsating with light that shifted between shades of blue and gold. Strange symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, their patterns moving like living creatures. Ethan let out a low whistle. "I'll give it to you, Princess. That's impressive." Zara didn't respond. She floated closer to the core, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what my father was afraid of." As she reached out toward the core, Ethan grabbed her arm. "Wait. Are you sure about this? We don't know what it can do." "I don't have a choice," Zara said, her voice firm. "If we don't use this, he'll find us. And when he does, we're dead." Ethan frowned but released her arm. "Just be careful." Zara placed her hand on the core's surface. The instant her fingers touched it, the entire cavern lit up, and a wave of energy surged through the air. Ethan stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The core's light engulfed Zara, lifting her hover chair slightly off the ground. She felt a rush of power coursing through her veins, unlike anything she had ever experienced. Memories, images, and symbols flooded her mind. Glimpses of the ancient civilization that had created the core, and the catastrophic war that had destroyed them. When the light faded, Zara's hover chair gently lowered to the ground. She opened her eyes, now glowing brighter than before. "What just happened?" Ethan asked, his voice cautious. Zara turned to him, her expression unreadable. "It's not just a weapon," she said. "It's a key. The core unlocks something buried even deeper, something my father couldn't control." Ethan blinked. "And now you can." "I don't know," Zara admitted, "but I have to try." Before Ethan could respond, a deafening roar echoed through the cavern. The ground shook, and the glow of the core flickered. "They're here," Zara said, her voice steady. Ethan drew his blaster, his jaw tightening. "Of course they are. You ready for this, Princess?" Zara's hover chair activated its defenses, energy shields flickering to life. "I was born ready." The two of them stood side by side as the cavern filled with the sound of approaching soldiers. Zara's mind raced with the knowledge she had gained from the core. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. Her fight against her father was far from over. Rise of the Princess. The battlefield was chaos. The cavern that had once pulsed with the serene glow of the core was now a storm of light and sound. Zara's father's forces poured into the cavern, their black armored soldiers moving like shadows. Energy blasts illuminated the rocky walls, and the ground trembled with every explosion. At the center of it all, Zara hovered in her chair, no longer a frightened fugitive. The core's energy coursed through her, amplifying her abilities and connecting her to something ancient and vast. Her once sleek hover chair now pulsed with golden energy, tendrils of light extending from it like living extensions of her will. Ethan crouched behind a boulder, firing his blaster with precision. "Zara," he yelled over the chaos. "Whatever you're going to do, now's the time." Zara didn't respond. Her glowing emerald eyes were locked on the soldiers advancing toward her. She extended her hand, and one of the tendrils of light lashed out, striking the lead soldier and sending him flying backward. The rest hesitated, unsure how to approach this new version of the princess they had been sent to capture. "You should leave," Zara said, her voice echoing with a strange, otherworldly resonance. "You have no idea what you're facing." Her words carried a weight that made even the most battle-hardened soldiers falter. But then a figure stepped forward, a towering officer clad in obsidian armor, his helmet shaped like a predator's skull. "Stand down, Princess," he growled, his voice distorted by his helmet's modulator. "You think your new tricks will save you. You're nothing compared to your father." Zara tilted her head, her expression calm and unbothered. "And yet he sent you to do his dirty work. That says more about him than it does about me." The officer snarled and raised his weapon, a massive cannon that hummed with deadly energy. "Let's see how long you last." He fired, the blast screaming toward Zara. But she didn't flinch. One of the glowing tendrils extended from her chair, forming a shield of golden light that absorbed the blast effortlessly. Ethan, watching from his cover, let out a low whistle. "Remind me not to get on your bad side," he muttered. Zara's gaze didn't leave the officer. "Last chance," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Leave now, and I won't destroy you." The officer laughed, a deep mechanical sound. "You don't scare me, little princess." Zara's expression hardened. "Then you're a fool." She raised both hands, and the core's energy surged around her. The ground beneath her chair cracked and glowed as tendrils of light lashed out in all directions. They struck the soldiers' weapons, disarming them with precision. Others targeted the officer, wrapping around his cannon and crushing it in his hands. The soldiers began to retreat, fear evident even through their helmets. The officer stumbled back, his confidence replaced with panic. "This isn't over," he spat, retreating toward the exit. "Your father will see to that." Zara didn't pursue him. Instead, she focused on the core, its glow pulsing in sync with her own energy. She could feel its power, its connection to something larger than herself. Ethan approached cautiously, his blaster still in hand. "So, what now?" he asked. Zara turned to him, her eyes still glowing. "Now we make a choice." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What kind of choice?" She gestured toward the core. "This power isn't just a weapon. It's a force of creation and destruction. My father wanted to use it to control the galaxy, but it doesn't belong to him, or to me. I can destroy it, or I can use it to fight back." Ethan frowned, his expression thoughtful. "And what happens if you use it? Do you become like him?" Zara hesitated. She had asked herself the same question. The core's power was intoxicating, its potential limitless. But with great power came the risk of losing herself. Before she could answer, a deep rumble shook the cavern. Ethan looked around, his grip tightening on his blaster. Oh, what was that? Zara closed her eyes, reaching out with her newfound connection to the core. "It's him," she said softly. "Who?" Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. "Korvax," Zara replied. "He's coming." Ethan's face darkened. "Then we'd better get ready." Zara opened her eyes, her resolve hardening. "No, I'm not running anymore. If he wants me, he'll have to face me." Ethan smirked. "I like this new side of you, Princess." She turned to him, her expression serious. "This isn't just my fight, Ethan. If I fail, he won't stop at me. He'll come for everyone who stands in his way, including you." Ethan nodded, his smirk fading. "Then let's make sure you don't fail." The rumble grew louder, the walls of the cavern shaking as Korvax's massive warship descended toward the planet. Zara's hover chair hummed with energy as she prepared herself for the confrontation she had been avoiding her entire life. For the first time, she wasn't running. For the first time, she was ready to rise. The final showdown. The sky above the barren planet was torn apart as Emperor Korvax's warship descended, casting a massive shadow over the battlefield. Its engines roared like a storm, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. From its underbelly, a sleek command pod detached, dropping rapidly toward the surface before landing with a thunderous crash. Zara hovered at the edge of the glowing core, her emerald eyes locked on the descending pod. The golden energy from the core rippled around her like a living aura, a testament to the ancient power she now wielded. Ethan stood a few paces behind her, his blaster at the ready. "Let me guess," Ethan said, trying to mask his unease with a smirk. "Your father likes to make an entrance." Zara didn't look back. "He thrives on fear. He wants me to feel small before he destroys me." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Well, good thing you're not small anymore." The command pod's hatch opened with a hiss, releasing a wave of pressurized air. Emperor Korvax emerged, his towering figure wrapped in ornate armor that gleamed like obsidian. His presence radiated authority, his glowing crimson eyes scanning the battlefield with cold precision. "So," Korvax said, his deep voice carrying across the rocky expanse, "my rebellious daughter has finally decided to make a stand." Zara's voice was steady, filled with a strength Ethan hadn't heard before. "You always told me strength was everything, Father. Let's see how strong you are without your empire to protect you." Korvax laughed, a low, menacing sound. "You think this display of borrowed power makes you my equal? The core has corrupted you, Zara. You are nothing but a child playing with forces you don't understand." Zara's hover chair glided forward, the energy surrounding her intensifying. "And yet you feared this borrowed power so much that you abandoned me to die. Maybe it's you who doesn't understand it." Korvax's expression darkened. With a sharp gesture, he summoned a blade of pure energy from his gauntlet, its edge crackling with destructive force. "You've always been defiant, but defiance without strength is meaningless. Let me show you the price of your arrogance." He charged toward her with inhuman speed, the ground cracking beneath his feet. Zara raised her hands, and the golden tendrils of the core's energy lashed out, meeting his blade in a blinding clash of light. Ethan shielded his eyes, ducking behind a boulder. "Yeah, I'll just stay out of that," he muttered. The battle was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Zara and Korvax moved like forces of nature, the core's energy and the Emperor's raw power colliding in waves that shook the planet itself. Zara's hover chair moved with impossible agility, her mastery of the core's energy allowing her to block and counter her father's relentless strikes. "You've grown stronger," Korvax admitted, his tone laced with grudging respect. "But strength alone won't save you." Zara smirked, a fire burning in her eyes. "Funny, that's what you used to tell me before you threw me away." She unleashed a surge of golden light, pushing Korvax back. The Emperor staggered but quickly regained his footing, his blade slicing through the tendrils with precision. Ethan, watching from the sidelines, noticed something the others didn't. The core's glow was pulsing faster, its energy becoming unstable. "Zara," he called out. "That thing's about to blow." Zara didn't turn, her focus locked on her father. "Then I'll finish this before it does." Korvax sneered. "You won't get the chance." He lunged forward, his blade aimed directly at her, but Zara was ready. She caught the blade with a tendril of energy, holding it in place as she stared into his eyes. "You've ruled through fear your entire life," she said, her voice steady. "But fear is a weak foundation, and your empire is crumbling because of it." Korvax snarled, struggling against her grip. "You're a fool if you think you can replace me." "I don't want to replace you," Zara said, her voice soft but firm. "I want to destroy everything you've built and start over." With a final surge of energy, she shattered his blade and sent him flying across the cavern. Korvax hit the ground hard, his armor cracked and smoking. He tried to rise, but the golden tendrils pinned him down. Ethan stepped forward cautiously, his blaster trained on the fallen emperor. "What now, princess? Do we finish him off?" Zara hovered over her father, the glow of the core reflecting in her eyes. For a moment, she considered it. Ending his life would be easy, and it would mean the end of his tyranny. But then she remembered what the core had shown her, the rise and fall of civilizations, all consumed by the same hunger for power that had driven her father. "No," she said finally, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "Killing him would make me like him." She turned to the core, its light flickering wildly. "But this ends now." Ethan's eyes widened. "Wait, what are you doing?" Zara placed her hands on the core, and the golden light engulfed her completely. She could feel its immense power surging through her, begging to be unleashed. But instead of wielding it, she let it go. The core began to collapse in on itself, its energy imploding in a cascade of light. Zara's hover chair pulled back as the cavern shook violently. "Run," she shouted. Ethan grabbed her hover chair and sprinted toward the exit as the core's energy consumed everything in its path. Behind them, Korvax's warship began to crumble, its systems failing under the core's overwhelming power. They barely made it out as the cavern collapsed, the core's final explosion lighting up the sky. In the aftermath, Zara and Ethan stood on a ridge overlooking the ruined battlefield. The core was gone, its energy extinguished, and with it, the last weapon of the ancient civilization. Zara turned to Ethan, her expression tired but resolute. "It's over." Ethan smirked. "For now. Something tells me your father won't give up that easily." She looked out at the horizon, where the first light of a new dawn was breaking. "Maybe not, but I'll be ready for him." For the first time in her life, Zara felt free, and she knew that this was only the beginning.